and we're delighted that they're here to present to us. So just a little bit about DSNMC. We are an organization that serves Montgomery County residents and others in the region. And so, sorry, I'm just trying to see if I can, okay. So our mission is to empower and support individuals with Down syndrome, their families, and the community through education, information, public awareness, and advocacy. And our website is included, and information, contact information is included as well. We will be providing this presentation in about a week or so on our website under parent workshops. So, so if you need to reference it, it will be there. Also, just some housekeeping. If you can all please stay on mute during the presentation, that would be great. We will entertain questions through the chat. So if you have questions throughout the presentation, go ahead and type it in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to it. So the presentation will probably run about 30 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have questions afterwards. And if you're thinking of questions while the presentation is occurring, then go ahead and please put it in the chat. Let's see. Also, an evaluation form is going to be linked in the chat, so please make sure to fill that out, so that we make sure that we have workshops that are important to you all and that that have the topics that you all are interested in. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce our guests. So first, Ms. Nancy Lucas began her career in special education as a speech language pathologist. Her first position was in a preschool program that provided services to school districts across 4 counties in Southern Illinois. She has worked in additional school districts in Illinois, Mississippi, and South Dakota as a speech language pathologist in elementary schools. The majority of her students were preschool age or infants and toddlers. In Montgomery County, Ms. Lucas continued as a speech language pathologist, providing services in an elementary school to students in Head Start, in school community-based classes, teaching a pre-K language class, and in Montgomery County Infants and Toddlers program. She moved into several administrative positions, including Human Resources, Center Placement Unit, and Assistant Principal at an elementary school that had an Elementary Learning Center program. Ms. Lucas is currently the coordinator of PEP, which is a Preschool Education Program, which provides services to students beginning on their 3rd birthday until they enter kindergarten. Ms. Lucas is a mother of 2 sons, and she's a proud nana of 4 grandchildren. And Ms. Amy Shorb, she's an instructional specialist in the Department of Special Education at MCPS. Mrs. Shorb has been a special education for over 35 years, both in public and private school settings. She began teaching in public schools in Connecticut before moving to the Washington, D.C. area. Ms. Shorb taught at Children's National Medical Center, Speech and Hearing Department for children 2 to 5 years old. She became an education coordinator at Children's National Medical Center, as well as a local at a local residential treatment center. Ms. Shorb has been with MCPS since 1997, when she taught special education in one of the first homeschool models. Since then, Mrs. Shorb has been an itinerant resource teacher, program specialist, and now instructional specialist for the Department of Special Education, working with students and school teams in PEP through high school. Mrs. Shorb has supported the transition process for students in preschool education program into kindergarten for many years. So with that, go ahead and share presentation, and I will go ahead and let Mrs. Lucas and Ms. Shorb present right now.
Okay, so you can go to the next slide. And you did the welcome and presented us, and thank you. So we have outcomes for this evening. We would like you to have received an overview of the kindergarten transition process, which happens to families in the preschool programs, and then to become familiar with the continuum of special education services. Next slide. So when is it time to go to kindergarten? When your child turns 5 on or before September 1. And this year, if you're on it, turn 5 on or before September 2021, you will start kindergarten in September, this September. Your neighborhood homeschool, as we say, is based upon your home address. And there is a continuum of special education services for students who are going into kindergarten who have special needs. And these services are based upon the specialized instruction as well as the type of support your child needs. We're going to talk about what happens.
Nancy, you froze.
Talk about how we work with our families to help them be part of that decision about what's best for their students. In the PEP program and in many of the other preschool special ed programs, Montgomery County, we have our special ed teachers and the related service providers, but we also have parent educators who are not teaching during the school day, so they have time to work with our families to provide this education to families about what is kindergarten about and what are the various options. Okay. And special ed services are implemented in a continuum of settings that we're going to go over in the presentation, including the general education environment and special class placements. Next slide. So what happens to our preschoolers and the families? We start by having meetings with the parent educators. We recognize that entering kindergarten is a very exciting time, but kind of scary. There are lots of emotions. For the IEP team, the Individualized Education Plan team, to make recommendations, we gather input from parents, teachers, therapists, parent educators, instructional specialists, such as Mrs. Shore, the program support teachers, and perhaps some special education supervisors and instructional specialists and staff from particular receiving schools. That includes principals, assistant principals, program coordinators at those elementary schools. Parent educators talk with families, whether individually or in group sessions, about what this whole process looks like and talks about what kindergarten readiness skills are. The parent educator is there to support the family however they need support. We have group meetings, but if you need to have an individual session with your parent educator or teacher, that can occur as well. You just need to reach out, send a phone call, send an email, and they will respond and help you become familiar and answer your questions about what is kindergarten and what are the options for kindergarten. We recognize this is a big decision and there are lots of things to consider. This year is particularly difficult because we aren't able to offer in-school observations, so you're going to just have to listen to lots of talking about what those programs are about. Okay, next slide. Okay, so your actual process may include some of these processes or all of them. So the needs are based upon your needs, and what happens are based upon what you need. The steps are different for every family and every child. There are informational meetings that parent educators do during the day. Amy and I go out to different organizations that ask for information. We share information, and we just want to help everyone understand what this process is about. Information and data are gathered and reviewed by parents, teachers, and therapists. Additional input may be provided by special education supervisors. Sometimes our PEP staff or preschool special ed staff say, gee, I'm not sure, and they reach out to staff that work in the kindergarten programs and say, would you take a look, do observation, or let me discuss what I'm seeing and what my questions are. So we have conversations, and then that information is shared at IEP meetings. Sometimes they do come to the classrooms, and so now we've had virtual observations, and now with children back in school, we're having some actual observations. Depends on the comfort level of the school and the size of the classes about how much in-person observations are taking place. At the meetings, the people from the kindergarten programs are able to answer specific questions about what their programs look like, what services they can offer. Often at an IP meeting, the receiving principals may be there and can be part of that discussion. So it is a group effort, and IP meetings, I like to think, are working events. The next slide. Oh, I think we skipped one. Okay, I'm confused. Okay, I'm sorry. So at your child's annual review or an amendment IP meeting, that is where a decision is going to be made about determining which kindergarten services are most appropriate. Parents attend your child's IP meeting because you're part of the whole team that makes those decisions. You ask questions, you provide information about what you think is appropriate and can help share and help everyone understand what is best for your child. Kindergarten in the neighborhood homeschool is always considered as a placement option before making a placement decision for a service outside of your neighborhood homeschool. So that's always something that we think about. We want children to go to their home school, but if that's not the most appropriate decision, then we look at other options for children. Parents and staff discuss the options for kindergarten. They discuss the options for instruction and assessment. So we talk about where a child is, what are the goals a child has, how should they be instructed in kindergarten, and what assessments would be appropriate for a child. So all of those things go into making that decision about what's best for kindergarten. Services in another school are recommended only when the IEP team determines that the student requires a service that's not available in the neighborhood homeschool. If you talk MCPS lingo, we always say homeschool when we mean your neighborhood homeschool. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. Okay.
Okay, so I think it's my turn, Nancy.
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about what a typical kindergarten day looks like. So I'm sure that some of you do have children who have been through elementary school or who are in the process, but for those who have not, you know, they don't have any kids yet who are have started kindergarten. We wanted to take a few minutes just to talk a little bit about what does it look like in MCPS. Kindergarten is full day, just like every other grade. It's about 6 hours and a couple of minutes, and it's Monday through Friday. Not sure what it's going to look like next year, but in person will definitely be that 6 hour and 5 days a week. Classroom sizes range from anywhere between like 18 and 25 students. And it's basically due to some schools are called focus schools and some are tier 1 or Title I schools. And those classes usually have a few less students. But the average size of a typical elementary classroom is in the 20s, 20 to 25. What happens during the day in kindergarten? So kindergarten is a full program where we have reading, language arts, math. They learn social studies and science, and they go to specials, the art, music, and PE. And they also participate or they're with their other peers in lunch and recess. So they go into that cafeteria just like you all may have remembered when we were in elementary school. But that's typically about what a kindergarten classroom will look like. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is just looking at a typical day, a schedule, and this is not for every school. Every school has to look at their master schedule, so things will look a little bit different. But for the most part, what we're looking at is consistency of the day. So our kindergartners are learning routines. They're learning about arrival and dismissal. They're learning about bathroom breaks and water breaks and those kinds of routines, in addition to the whole group or the reading and language arts times, as well as mathematics. So while every school and every class is going to look a little bit different, for the most part, this is what we're going to see in kindergarten, or your child's going to see in kindergarten. Next slide, please. Just to mention about the curriculum and instruction. So for the last couple of years, we have been using the Benchmark Advance for reading instruction and Eureka Math. We've been using that for mathematics. Now, I believe that the PEP program is using Eureka Math. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're using Eureka Math this year, and next year we will start using Benchmark.
Okay, great.
Right.
That's great. So there'll be some consistency with any children that are transitioning from PEP this year into the kindergarten classroom, and that's nice to have some familiarity with what and how they're learning. Next slide, please. This slide really talks about the reading language arts piece. And, you know, in all the reading language arts, we oftentimes have whole group reading, small group, targeted lessons, such as phonics and mini lessons, very specific to what those individual students' needs. Sometimes you'll also see some interventions, but for the most part, we're using the Benchmark Advance curriculum to instruct students in reading and written language. In mathematics, we're using the Eureka Math, and that also has those same types of, next slide, please. Thank you. Has the same breakdown where you're going to have a whole group math lesson. You might have smaller groups as follow-up or to practice skills. And there's also going to be the opportunity for students to practice or do their work independently. So our kindergartners, when they all come in, we're trying to help them learn how to be students in an elementary school. And it's a new experience, a new environment, lots of things going on, lots of things changing. So the more consistency we can have with our schedule, our instruction, all the different practices throughout the day, the more our kids are going to become more independent. And really, that's kind of one of the big pieces of kindergarten, becoming an independent student, a student who understands what it means to go to school every day and be able to, you know, just be successful in learning. So that's just sort of a general understanding or presentation of what our kindergarten programs, elementary school programs are about. Throughout the county, we have, I think we have 143 elementary schools. We're at the numbers have changed, so I apologize, but we have a lot of elementary schools, and they're all consistently implementing both the reading and the math using Eureka and also using Benchmark. Next slide, please. So we want to talk a little bit about the special education services that are provided at the elementary level, and specifically about kindergarten. You know, special education services is about what the student needs, what's best for the student so that they can be successful in their learning experience. Special education is specially designed instruction, which means it's very specific, or it is specific to what the students need in order to be successful, in order to access the curriculum. So it's very individualized, just like our IEP. That's what it is, an individual program. Next slide, please. In our county, there is a continuum of services. I'm sure you've heard the word continuum multiple times, but it provides, or our continuum of services provides many different programs or services in order to address all the students in our county. So the first, and Nancy, you commented about this at the very beginning, talking about homeschool. So our elementary school that's in our neighborhood, that's in our area where we live, that is our local school. It is our homeschool as well, but the homeschool model is about being able to provide special education services to those students in their elementary school, in their local elementary school. So students who are in the homeschool model are in the general education classroom, participating with all of the you know, their typical peers, receiving instruction in the, you know, our general education curriculum, but also there are students who also need some additional support, specialized instruction to address needs in any particular content area. So maybe reading, maybe math, written language. It could also be that they need some additional support or specific instruction with managing behavior or school tasks or organizational skills. So again, our homeschool model is where our students go to their local elementary school and they're able to receive their special education services while they are also participating in their typical classroom environment. Okay. In addition to the special education services that address the reading, the math, the written language, students in a homeschool model and all programs are able to receive and do receive related services. So I know in PEP, I'm sure many of the students have or are receiving speech and language services, OT, PT, those continue on. So if the students need that service, those students will receive those services when they enter kindergarten and thereafter. Okay. Next slide, please. This again is just an example of a schedule and very similar to what we just talked about. In the homeschool model in a kindergarten classroom, what you might see is you're going to see specially designed instruction implemented in a variety of ways. So oftentimes a special educator and a gen ed, the classroom teacher, will meet and plan together so that they have a lesson or instruction or assignments that are accessible for all students. So maybe not just our students that have IEPs, but we're looking at, they're working together so that instruction is accessible, learning is accessible for all students, but with a real focus on the kids that have specific areas of need. So that's one way through that planning process. Another way would be with a special educator, co-teaching, taking a small group, maybe teaching the whole group, but implementing those special strategies, the supplemental aids and services into instruction so that the student is successful academically. And then the last one is a paraeducator. Oftentimes we have paraeducators, not always in every classroom. Sometimes they come in and they go out, they go from one class to the next, but they're also very important to help with small group, individual support. So that is also another individual who can help support students' IEP needs. Okay. The next slide. So in addition to, and this is the part of the continuum, in addition to the homeschool model where students are engaged in the general education classroom and receiving special education services, we also have a program that is called the Elementary School-Based Learning Centers. And this isn't a program that's in every school. It's in an area where students from a number of schools might attend because they're in need of more intense services, specifically in the academics, so that's the core academics. So oftentimes we'll see students who are developing much slower, so in that reading, that writing, that mathematics, where they need a very structured, frequent, a consistent structure. I'm blanking what I want to say, but they receive it in their self-contained or a small classroom setting so that they have the opportunity to have previewing of information, practice of information, opportunities for clarifying. This can be provided both by a special educator or a paraeducator, but it's very targeted to those specific needs of the student. So again, their needs are more intense than a student in the homeschool model. The neat thing about the elementary learning centers is that those are in, our typical elementary schools. So they work really hard or collaborate with the general education classrooms. So while these students might be in the Learning Center for the heavy-duty reading, math, written language piece, they might co-teach, the classroom teacher and the special ed teacher might co-teach both the gen ed classroom and students from the Learning Center together, so that students have an opportunity to work together, to socialize together, to be with their peers, their non-disabled peers, and benefit from that experience. Students also that are in the Learning Center typically go to specials being art, music, and PE, and lunch and recess with the same grade level gen ed classrooms. So again, there are many opportunities for them to be in the general education classroom, having the opportunity to work with their typical peers. At the same time, we know that if a student needs more intense services, the Learning Center can provide that. So our goal is to give them every opportunity to be successful in an inclusive setting, but also if they need that more intense support or instruction, the Learning Center can provide that. Okay. The next page, please. So special education services that are also in our gen ed classrooms, our typical elementary schools, are the programs for physical disabilities, augmentative and alternative communication, or we call it AAC, services for visually impaired and deaf and hard of hearing. So for the visually impaired and deaf and hard of hearing, oftentimes there are itinerant teachers that come into the classroom and work with the general education teacher, paraeducator, special education teacher in planning and implementing the services that a child may need in order to be successful in the gen ed classroom, so that they can access the curriculum with those specific strategies and tools that have been provided to those students. Augmentative and alternative communication is also can also be providing services in the gen ed classroom, but also they have, for more intensive services, they do have just a couple of smaller classroom sizes that address those students who have expressive language disorders or challenges. So those are the kids that may be nonverbal, or they may be unintelligible. It's very difficult to understand what they're saying. And so those services can be provided both in the gen ed setting as well as in a more intense program, depending on the student's needs. And physical disabilities, there are a couple of different programs. If a student can be in their home school, absolutely fine. Sometimes they may need some more full day types of services, and we have those in various elementary schools, but they are fully included in the gen ed setting. Next slide, please. And I'm going to ask you to go one more, and then we'll come back to this one. So I wanted to talk a little bit about another service that is available, and we provide for students with social emotional special education needs. And so those are children with emotional and behavioral challenges that are interfering with their ability to learn. So they're very capable of learning. However, those emotional and those behavioral challenges are significantly interfering or impacting their learning. And we have, there's oftentimes that social emotional services group will do consults, will come out and work with our different schools if a particular student is having difficulty in a program. But they also have an intense program where students will attend an area elementary school with those services, receive the instruction in the gen ed setting, but also receive support to manage their social, emotional, and behavioral needs. So again, lots of these programs are in different areas, but they're as close to our home schools, our local schools as possible. Okay, so if you can go back, that would be great. Oh, great, thank you. So our Learning for Independence and our school-based community, our school community-based programs are for students with significant learning and social needs. These students are not able to access the typical learning environment, and so they require the alternative learning outcome, or they work towards alternative learning outcomes based on our state standards and our curriculum. Learning for Independence program is really working on those academics, how to generalize those into their school day, as well as into their day-to-day experiences. For students in the school community-based program, those students have more moderate to severe and profound intellectual disabilities. And their focus is really working on communication, personal and behavior management, socialization. So instruction is very individualized to really target those needs for those students. And again, those students are also receiving the alternative learning outcomes based on curriculum, based on our state standard goals. The next slide is another program, the autism program, and that is a program for children with significant learning and social issues. And so they need a program that is intense, very individualized to target their needs based on their disability. Oftentimes, the teaching process is typically the ABA, or the Applied Behavior Analysis, where they're really targeting very specific skills and working on those specific skills with students. So it's individualized for every single student. And while you will see some small group instruction, most of the time, the classic autism that we call it, is most of the day it's individual, one-on-one. So it's very intense services. Thank you. And then our last group of schools are our public day schools. And talking about Carl Sandburg, it's a learning center, but it's a learning center that also really supports students, their academics, but also that their behavior, having lots of difficulty with self-regulation, lots of sensory issues. So this is a very comprehensive program to look at the learning needs, as well as the other pieces, the motor, the sensory, the language, as well as the behavior. So the neat thing about Carl Sandburg is that they also use both curriculums. So the general education curriculum for students who can access that curriculum, and then they also have services for, or alternative learning outcome curriculum for those students who present with intellectual disabilities and need something different. Longview and Stephen Knowles are programs for our physically, for our significant, profoundly impaired students, motor related to health. They also have health issues, communication issues, learning, significant learning, and they are typically connected to elementary schools. So Longview is connected to Matsunaga. Carl Sandburg used to be a standalone program, but in order to be more inclusive, Carl Sandburg, I think, is now at Meadow Hall Elementary, I think. And I'm not sure about Stephen Knowles, but the more opportunity for our students with IEPs, with disabilities, to be in more inclusive opportunities in the gen ed setting, in typical elementary schools, the better for all our kids. One other thing about one more thing about next slide, please.
Why don't I take it from here, Amy?
Sure.
Give you a break. Okay.
Okay.
So the next slide is talking about related services, and I guess I want to do this one because I'm a speech pathologist at heart. So if wait a minute, I lost my page. So if a student needs to have some related services to help them be the best student they can be, we provide that in preschool, kindergarten, all the way through high school. So a team decides how much a child needs, if they need speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, vision services, and hearing services. Those are all provided, and those are related to the curriculum. They work with the classroom teacher to help the child be the best student, and they provide services to help the child access the curriculum and be the best student they can be. So they are related. The only one of these that's a standalone, there are times a child only receive speech and language therapy, so that is their primary service, and they receive no other service, or they could have a related motor service. So speech therapy is different. We're special people, and they sometimes can be the primary service provider. But for many students going to kindergarten, they need a special education teacher, so then the speech pathologist is related to support that special ed teacher. Okay, the next slide. Is talking about school assignments, and we have some questions that we were sent ahead of time, so I think this will answer some of the questions. So as I said before, we have this lingo of homeschool. So based upon where you live, you have a neighborhood homeschool. So PEP staff and other pre-K programs, they are charged with recommending a program for your child based upon your homeschool. Now, there are times that families say, I want something different. PEP is not part of that process. MCPS is a big system, and so there's a form for that. You know, there are forms for almost everything. There's a form for asking for a change of school assignment, a COSA, change of school assignment. So someone's asking, when can that be requested? That's your personal decision that you want to make, that you want to ask for a change of school assignment. I, as PEP coordinator, have only one or two instances that I can share about when I was involved. I was asked an opinion. Well, what do you think? And I could say, in one case, their child's going to get 5 hours of support on the homeschool model. There's no reason they can't go to their home school. So that kind of was the answer. There was another case that I was involved in. Just briefly, I did ask questions. I don't make the decision. There was a student who had significant motor and cognitive physical disabilities, and he was in a before and after school daycare that was unique and special. So that family was granted a COSA because there weren't a lot of child cares that would accept a student who was non-ambulatory and blind and nonverbal. So Amy's raising her hand.
Yeah, Nancy, that's a great example of a hardship or a unique hardship.
Right.
So there are like 3 areas that you're asked about regarding a COSA. So one is a unique hardship. Why is it that you're requesting your child attend another school, a different school? And that's a great example that there is a special daycare that really can address your child's individual needs, different from any other program. Another might be that you say your kids attended Strawberry Knoll and then you moved to Clarksburg. You could request to stay at Strawberry Knoll. So you're moving and you just want to stay at that local school. That's another option. Please keep in mind though, if you have a student with an IEP, that we do ask that you have to contact the Department of Special Education, so that they can review the information in addition to the school that you've asked for the COSA for your child to go to. So you do have to contact the special ed office to be able to explain what your hardship might be or your circumstances might be before that can be approved by the principal.
So it is a change. I mean, someone has asked a question, your child's attending this PEP in a particular school, and you're going to be asked now to make a change for kindergarten. Yes, you are, but PEP is typically 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. Kindergarten, I mean, your elementary experience is going to be 6 years. So that's a good time to make that change, to go to your homeschool for kindergarten and then be there through 5th grade. So again, the PEP team has no part of that COSA application or decision making. And I just shared the 2 examples that I've been involved with. So Amy is calling it a hardship, something really unique. Is
Yes.
So you have to present a reason why you're asking for that hardship. Okay, so that's school assignment. And then there's a question about if you don't want to send your child to kindergarten. Some parents say, I don't want him to go to kindergarten this next year. So you would go to your homeschool and complete a form to say that you're asking for a kindergarten waiver. And that is a parent's right to do that. You don't have to explain why. You just say, I'm not sending him or her to kindergarten next year. And so then you would start kindergarten the following year. Okay, the next slide. Transportation. So most students ride their neighborhood bus to school, and that means you'll no longer have that door-to-door service. But if your child needs to have door-to-door service, specialized transportation, that can be provided. Even if it's at your home school, but if you're definitely outside of your neighborhood home school, then you would get that specialized transportation. The IEP team makes a decision about what's best for the student, whether they need the support of specialized instruction or they can ride the neighborhood bus to school. Specialized equipment such as seat belts and lifts are determined by the IEP team. Okay, I think that's all for transportation. We can go to the next slide. And kindergarten registration. If you're in a preschool program now, at the end of the last day of school, the PEP staff or the pre-K staff physically takes the child's file to the kindergarten school. Online kindergarten registration opens April 26th.
Ms. Lucas, I think you froze.
Fall, there will be a face-to-face opportunity. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't think anyone else knows at this point.
Hey, Nancy,
I
can I just jump in?
Yes.
You froze for a minute. And
okay, yes.
So I just want to go back to that registration. So
yes,
you want to register online for kindergarten registration. That begins April 26th. What's going to happen in August is that principals are going to reach out to students and have a face-to-face, an in-person opportunity to meet their teacher, see their new school. And I know that's important because we haven't been in school, that much, and these are new experiences for kids. Thank you.
Sure. And then during this summer, there's some opportunities at elementary schools such as ELO, early learning opportunities, to different programs. So I think many elementary schools are going to have programs this summer. Some children who are in PEP or other special ed programs will be attending ESY, and that will be a continuation of their PEP services. Okay, and the next slide, I think is the last slide. We did receive some questions in advance. One question is about PEP Pilot. Will PEP Pilot be 5 days next school year? PEP Pilot is currently 5 days, and it will continue to be 5 days. Okay, there was a question about meeting teachers and staff before the first day of kindergarten. So we've answered that question about the opportunity that principals are going to provide in August. And then how are kindergarten placements recommendations determined? And I hope you now understand it's a process of lots of informational sessions, observations, questions, answers, discussions, and then at that IEP meeting, everyone gathers around and discusses and comes to a conclusion, a decision about what is best. We hope that families don't disagree, but there is a process for families to disagree anytime after an IEP meeting, even while you're in preschool or when you're in 3rd grade or 9th grade. There is a whole process, and there's a whole booklet about how you disagree with an IEP team decision, which you can do at any time. So I'm not going to go into details about how you ask for a mediation or you do a due process hearing. That's the whole process, a whole pamphlet about that. So if you feel the need, and I encourage families to do that if that's how you feel, that we do that in a timely manner, that sometimes it's a good thing, and a team may make a decision and a family may say, I want a mediation, and then you can come to a middle road, a new agreement, and I don't view it as a problem. So there are ways to do it, but I'm not going to go into details about that. So are there other questions that have come up in the chat? So there's a question, is PEP pilot and PEP collaboration, are they the same thing? Yes and no. They both are classrooms that have children with IEPs and children without IEPs. They occurred or were developed years ago in a different manner. With PEP collaboration, the PEP teacher collaborates, teams up with a pre-K teacher. So there's some schools that have pre-K programs that are pre-K or Head Start. Those are
I think we lost her again.
and have opportunities with children with and without disabilities to learn together. So with PEP collaboration, it is a PEP teacher and a pre-K teacher combine their classes, divided them up, and you have a group, 2 groups, and each group has some children with IEPs and some without IEPs in both groups. So that's PEP collaboration. PEP pilot, we have a self-contained PEP class, and we are changing it. We've changed it by inviting community peers in. So those are schools that don't have the pre-K programs, which are based upon income. So that's why there are different programs in different schools. So community peers or families to say, I'll come to have my child come to school and be in this wonderful program because it's a program in a comprehensive elementary school. The children go to art and music and PE, just like you do in kindergarten. Okay, I need help with questions. Yes.
All right, so Ms. Lucas,
Yes.
here are a couple other questions. You've been asked to clarify what alternative learning outcomes are.
Okay, I'm going to give that one to Amy because that starts in kindergarten.
Right, so alternative learning outcomes is taken from the general education curriculum that is on the diploma track that comes straight from the state, the state standards for learning. Alternative learning outcomes are typically for children with significant intellectual disabilities, and they are modified goals and objectives for those particular students. So it's aligned with our gen ed curriculum, but it's modified to address the needs of children with intellectual disabilities.
Thank you. There's a couple questions that are related to which programs are diploma track and which ones are on alternative learning outcomes. And while also addressing is that, I'm not saying this right, SESES or SESES diploma track. I don't know how you
Sure. I can answer. Yeah, I can answer that. It's, it's the students that are participating in the general education curriculum is that diploma track. The program, the special education services that do support or the IEP needs in order to access the curriculum would be homeschool model, the elementary learning center, the SES, it's the social emotional special education services. So children with average intellectual ability, but those social emotional needs are interfering. Also, trying to think of what other services that are diploma bound at the elementary level. Related services are provided regardless of what curriculum is being, or not, what curriculum is being followed. The alternative learning outcomes are typically for learning for independence, LFI programs, school community-based programs, our classic autism. So those are children who present with intellectual an intellectual disability. And I'm trying to think if we have any more. The special education programs such as Carl Sandburg have both, but Longview and Stephen Knowles for children who have, significant or multiple disabilities, they are also following the alternative learning outcomes based on the curriculum. But again, that would be a certificate program, type program. So
is the SESES schools, are they like learning centers?
They are, no, not necessarily. They are children typically are, have, on grade level. They're typically on grade level. Those kids can be a little bit on, below. They could receive reading and math interventions. So they understand, but the social, emotional, or the behaviors are interfering with their availability to learn and, to learn. And so not only do they have consults to support kids in the homeschool model, for example, but they also have a separate program that provides a very structured and intense special education day to address those behaviors, those social emotional challenges, at the same time giving them the opportunity to be in the gen ed classrooms. So there's a lot of inclusion opportunities, but these students need that additional support from a counselor, from maybe a social worker, to help them be successful.
So are those, there's actually, people are texting me questions also, and I also have questions because I've never heard of this program. And so this is really good information. And so is this program taught by a special education teacher and a paraeducator in the same way like a learning center would be co-taught in that, or not co-taught, but have the support in the similar way?
Right. So an old term of self-contained classroom, it's similar in that regard. For our learning center programs, that program typically supports students who are 2 or more years below grade level and need some intense academic support. Whereas the SESES program, that's social emotional program, they may have academic needs, but that's not the primary issue. It's that the behavior or the coping or the being able to self-reflect, those pieces are really the primary issue that gets in the way of them learning. So they are general ed, curriculum bound or diploma bound.
Thank you. Another question was asked about related services, and I guess what are related services, if any, are provided if you choose to waive kindergarten? And I think this was addressed a little bit, but maybe if you could talk about that a little bit more.
If you waive kindergarten, then you're saying, I'm not sending my child to school. So maybe you have them in a private preschool, then you would be eligible to have a service plan, which is not an IEP. And under a service plan, a child that age could receive some special education support and some speech support. But a service plan is not FAPE, which is a free appropriate public education. So it is not about being the best for a child. When you say I'm not going to accept public school services, then you as a parent are saying I'm turning down the free appropriate public education. So a service plan is not an IEP in private school. It is a service plan, and we only provide some special ed services and some speech and language. None of the other services are provided to students under a service plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
There was another question here, I think because Ms. Lucas, you
I froze.
You froze in one place. If you could, there was a repeat about what you were saying, what PEP collaboration is.
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, so PEP collaboration, we have a PEP teacher who has a class of say 10 children, and then next door there's a pre-K teacher, and that's the income-based eligible program, and she may have 20 children. They divide their class in half, and And so the PEP teacher takes 10 or 9 of the pre-K students, and she gives the pre-K teacher 5 of hers. So they each have a class of 15. So they have a class of students with IEPs and without IEPs. And so that's done for maybe 3/4 of the morning. So the children are together, and then they have time in their homeroom assignment and then time in their special group, and they make up, you know, the bluebirds, redbirds, or the A group or the B group, and so they flip back and forth every other week. You have your main instruction from the PEP teacher, and the other week from the pre-K teacher. Both teachers have paraeducators. Sometimes a student may say, like a student with an IEP, he can't take that change, so he's always with his PEP teacher, but he has typical peers, children without IEPs, coming into his classroom. So individual decisions are made for students, but that's a way that we have worked to have students with IEPs to have opportunities to learn with children without IEPs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so here's another question. Do you feel that one of the PEP programs better prepares a child for a homeschool experience in a school without special education?
Well, first, I want to say that every elementary school has special education.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so, and I can't say that one program, one PEP class is going to do something different than another one. So what I like to say to families is that, and I was someone who did initial IEPs for 3-year-olds. So this is where we're starting with your child. Don't know what it's going to look like next year or the year after. So an IEP is developed year by year, but what's best now, and you really can't predict what's going to be best for 4th grade or 3rd grade. So I encourage families to reach out and communicate with their service providers, the teachers, the other related service people, and then decide what are the best goals and what's the best way to work on those goals. So what are the best services? Is it going to be a smaller class or a larger class? Is it going to be in their neighborhood homeschool kindergarten class with support coming in, or do they need to go out for support? So every child's IEP is different. And I just want to share that when I was an assistant principal at a school that had a learning center, so in kindergarten, you started out in your kindergarten learning center classroom, but then as the year went on, maybe one student went over across the hall for reading in the gen ed classroom. So by 3rd grade, everybody had a different schedule because it was individualized. We really do individualize what happens to children. We give them what they need when they need it. Well, we try to do that.
I always say to teachers, and maybe this helps parents understand when they think about what program's better or for their child, one or the other. But I always say to teachers when I'm working with them, remember that the IEP is what drives the services. So it's really important to reflect in those individual educational plans who the student is, and then what are their needs, what are their goals, what do we need to target, and then that will help drive the decision about what services do they need, so that they can be successful, be successful with their IEP.
Thank you both so much. It looks like we've come to the end of our questions. I'm like looking through here. If there's any more questions, please type them in the chat. But I think that we've covered all of them.
You were going to put our email addresses in the chat, and I can't answer a specific question about your specific child because I don't know your child. So I would encourage you to reach out to your child's teacher or someone at your school to help guide you through what's going to be best for your child. But I'm happy for you to give my email address and happy to answer questions. So if you think, oh, I meant to ask so-and-so, please do write me.
I just included mine, and as Nancy said, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very fortunate that for a few years now, I'm able to work with the PEP team in discussing and thinking about what does a child need perhaps in kindergarten? What might it look like? So it's a great learning, problem solving experience. And I know with our whole COVID experience being virtual, teachers were amazing. You know, they really were able to look at what was happening at home and coming back to school. And so, you know, I'm sure that they have been able to share that same information with parents, but we really appreciate getting the input from families as we, you know, make those decisions. But I'm happy to answer any questions or help anybody if they have any specific needs.
And my address is in the chat as well. I figured out how to do that.
So it looks like there is one more question. Is it common for parents to have their children with special needs either delay kindergarten or repeat it to allow time to mature?
I would say it's not common, and that is a parental decision. One big difference between staying in preschool and going to kindergarten is all day, and most of the PEP programs are 2.5 hours. So we really feel like if your child is 5 by the September 1, then we want to be part of recommending a full day program for your child.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
So it looks like we are, as I'm going through here to make sure we haven't missed anyone, at the end here. And oh gosh, there's one more message here. Goodness. Oh, everybody's just basically saying thank you at this point.
Okay.
This was very informative. And I agree. This has been I'm so glad that we've done this, and I hope that we can do this annually, actually.
I was about to say, let's do it again next year.
Yes, let's do this.
Okay.
Thank you both so much.
Sure.
And I certainly hope that everyone here tonight will click on the evaluation link that I also put in the chat. And if you could do that, that would be great. It's also a way for you to make suggestions for family workshops for topics because we do several of them. So again, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Night.